Good morning, guys. It's Miss Adair here. Today we're going to be learning about food chains and energy, and we're going to tie multiplication in with that. So today our learning target is I can describe how energy moves through a food chain and use multiplication to measure energy transfers between organisms. And we're going to be able to do that by using our key vocabulary words to describe how energy moves. We're going to be able to use multiplication to calculate the energy transfers. And by the end of it, we're going to be able to create and explain your own food chain. So now we're going to watch a short video to see energy transfers in action.
Let's look at how energy is transferred through a food chain. Energy from the sun is harnessed by producers, such as this plant, through photosynthesis. Some of the energy is used by the plant for cellular respiration, or is lost as either heat or waste. The rest of the energy is stored in the body of the plant. If the plant is eaten, only the energy stored within it is passed on to the consumer, in this case, a caterpillar. Of that energy from the plant, some will be used by the caterpillar for cellular respiration, or lost as either heat or waste, while the rest of the energy is stored in the body. If the caterpillar is eaten by another animal, it is the stored energy in the caterpillar that is passed on to the next step of the food chain. In this way, energy is transferred up the food chain in one direction, but only the stored energy is available as food for the next level in the food chain.
Now, one quick question for you guys. What was moving through the food chain? You're right, it's energy. So now, since we got that little knowledge of food chains, we're going to move on to our vocabulary words. Our first one is producers, which they make their own food, which would be our plants. Next, we have consumers. They eat other organisms. Now, we have three different types of consumers. Our first one is primary. They eat plants. Second, we have our secondary consumers, which eats our primary consumers. Then we have our tertiary consumers, which they eat our secondary consumers. And last, we have decomposers, which they break down dead matter. Okay. Now, since we know our vocabulary words, we are going to draw a simple food chain. First, we would start out with our producer, which would be grass. Next, we would have our primary consumers, which would be a rabbit. Next, we would have our secondary consumers, which would be a fox. Okay, so now say if we have 3 grass plants. Our grass plants are going to be 5 energy points apiece. Okay, so if we have 3 grass plants and each of them is worth 5 energy points, we're going to need to take 5 times 3 to figure out how many energy points our grass plants have in total. So we would take 5 times 3 equals, so now we can use skip counting or we can use our counters to figure out the total. So right now let's do skip counting. So we would start out with 5, 10, 15. So our grass is going to have 15 energy points in total. Okay, so now say our rabbit comes along and eats all 3 grass plants. The rabbit will then receive all 15 of those energy points. So now our rabbit has 15 energy points. Okay. And then say our fox comes and eats our rabbit. Those 15 energy points will then transfer up to the fox. So now our fox will receive those 15 energy points. Okay. So now, since we know a simple food chain, let's do another example. So first we start off with our producer, which is grass. Next, we have our primary consumers. Let's say this time it is a grasshopper. And then next we have our secondary consumers, which, let's say this time it is a bird. Okay. So now, let's say our grass is worth 2 points, 2 energy points apiece. Okay. So say our grasshopper comes along and eats 4 grass plants. We would need to take 4 times 2 to figure out how many energy points the grasshopper would receive. So 4 times 2 is, we can use skip counting again. So we can do 2, 4, 6, 8. So our grasshopper would receive 8 energy points. Energy points. So then it will transfer up here. Okay. Now to take it one step further, say if we have 2 grasshoppers at 8 energy points apiece. Say our bird comes and eats 2 grasshoppers. Each grasshopper has 8 energy points. We will need to take 8 times 2 to figure out the total number of energy points the bird would have. So now let's try to do an array. Okay? So we would start out with 8. So let's do 8 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we need 2 columns. We already have 1 column, so we just need to add 1 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's count them all together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So our bird would receive 16 energy points. Okay. Now, let's move on to a fun little card game. Before this, I passed out a bunch of cards to each group. So now get with your shoulder partners. Okay. Now since you're with your partners, I want you guys to pay attention to me real quick, and I'm going to model on how to play the game. Okay, so let's mix them up. Okay. say we picked a flower, okay? Our flower, one flower has 2 energy points, okay? Next, we're going to pick our primary consumer, which is a mouse, okay? Our mouse is worth 4 energy points. Next, we need our secondary consumer, which will be a snake, okay? So say our mouse eats 2 flowers at 2 energy points apiece. We would need to take 2 times 2 to figure out how many energy points the mouse would receive. Okay? So let's take your whiteboards and draw an array. So we would need 2 columns and 2 rows. So our mouse would receive 4 energy points. Okay? So now our mouse has 4 energy points. Okay? So say our snake comes and eats our mouse. That snake will then receive the 4 energy points that the mouse received from eating 2 flowers. So now, let's go over our vocabulary words real quick before I let you guys separate and do this game by yourselves. First, we have our producers, which is our plants, which they make their own food. Next, we have our consumers. They eat other organisms. And we have 3 types. We have our primary, which eats our producers. We have our secondary, which eats our primary consumers. And next, we have our tertiary consumers, which eats our secondary consumers. And now we have decomposers, which they break down dead matter. So now I want you guys to separate into your groups, and I'm going to be walking around asking you guys questions on your food chain.